Okay, hello and welcome to one of the most anticipated online chess clashes of the year. Today, two of the game biggest personalities collide on Endgame AI in a high stakes Blitz showdown. On one side, we have Hans Niemann, the fearless American grandmaster known for his fighting chess style, incredible tactical instincts, and his ability to thrive under pressure. Hans always delivers excitement. Standing opposite him is Anish Giri, the Dutch super grandmaster, one of the world's most respected elite players. Famous for his opening prep, positional mastery, razor sharp calculation, and legendary sense of humor. Giri has spent years competing at the very highest level of world chess. The players will battle over 18 Blitz games with time control 3 minutes plus 2 seconds. Whoever reaches 9.5 score will be called the battle winner. We expect opening novelties, brilliant tactics, time pressure drama, and world-class chess from the first move. So, in less than a minute, we have Hans versus Anish. Let's go. Okay, 20 seconds, and we're expecting the battle to start. Okay, we started with... Okay, I will flip the board. And we have Semislav. This is the Budvenik variation with bishop g5. We're expecting pawn takes pawn, followed by b5. I think this is the main theory here. Yes, this is what happened. And then bishop b7 or a6. Knight bd7, and black should be able to hit the center with either c5 or e5. a6 is coming, I don't know, I hope. I think a6 has to be played. Oh, but now we have a5. Okay, so he exchanged the knight on e5, the bishops. Now, if we go to an ending, we may have 3/2 on the queen side, but we're still in the middle game, and this bishop is really monster. This bishop is not participating really well in the game up to this moment. Ideas like bishop b1, queen d3 might be annoying, but you need to take care of the pawn first. f5 was already played, okay. We can go to the moves first here in order to follow the moves, and then we can go to battle here when we want to follow the score. Okay. White has some initiative. Yes, the classic idea of giving checkmate has to be stopped with g6. Okay. How will Anish continue? The bishop is still the problematic piece. Maybe this idea. But Anish will move. How about these ideas of e4 and f5? Try to destroy black's king. Or maybe rook left. We don't know. Okay, slow maneuvering. Knight e2, knight a4. Knight a4, the idea is to play c5, of course. He needs to unleash the bishop. Okay, very good maneuver by Hans here to put pressure on e3 pawn. Also, knight d4 was very good from Anish Giri because he stopped c5, the pawn would drop. Now he tries to destroy the king position. Will we see some sacrifices after pawn takes? Will we see knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes, and the pawn shelter will be destroyed? We didn't reach any time scramble up to this point. The players are still having enough time to think. A minute and a half versus a minute and a half. Now c5 anyways, dropping the pawn, but unleashing the bishop. Okay, very active from Hans. Now, there's no time to take because we take with the tempo, maybe. And then the check, you move. The queen joins. I don't know. This is this is really tricky. So can we take anyways? Dropping the knight and then give a check? And then the queen joins? I don't know. I think pawn takes pawn is very interesting. Anish, only 30 seconds. Oof. Okay, he sacked the knight on e6. Is it the best sacrifice? I don't know. Because the king is now... Yeah, okay, but... Oh... Now there's rook f6. And there's rook f7. And you don't have enough time to do this because queen takes with a check. But can we do it anyways? And on queen takes with a check, the bishop hangs at the end of the variation. So if rook f8, queen g6, queen g7, queen g7, king g7, rook f7, and the bishop drops. Nice counter attack. Very nice counter attack. Okay. Four seconds for Anish. Rook f6, putting pressure on g6 pawn. This is... Oh, wow. Wow. Rook c6, defending g6. Also, this check is very annoying. Oh my god. A lot of mating traps or mating nets. He's removing the queen. Check, okay. And then he took, removing one of the... Okay, take care of this check. That's a very annoying check. Almost mating. Okay, he shuts the door. He shuts the diagonal with rook e4. check. We need to cover. Okay. And now this is... Oh my god! Wow! Anish won on time! No, sorry. Hans Niemann won on time and also on the position. I think this mate is unstoppable. Let's go to game 2. Okay, game 2. Now Hans is on camera. This is the Italian game with knight c3. A very trendy line nowadays. He actually played it in the World Championship Rapid and Blitz for teams. I saw the same line with knight c3, knight d5. Rook e1, very natural. I think he's trying to get c3 followed by d4 at some point. Also, the ideas of f5 after king h8 try to open the f file and put pressure on this pin should be played from black side from Anish Giri. So the score now is 1 for Hans. Yes, the idea has come, king h8. I think f5 is in the way. And I think Anish will play really aggressively now because he wants to come back. It's a long battle, but he's already under pressure. 1-0 for Hans now. c3, the knight has to be kicked away, or you have to play this now. If the queen takes, there's knight d3, and this is what happened in the game. Okay. So it's either to ruin your structure or to lose a pawn. A good question to Hans, and Hans decided to give up a pawn. But the pawn is immediately given back. And these ideas maybe in the air. Hans is not interested in taking the pawn, and instead he's activating his bishop. He wants e5, queen e4. Okay, so Anish is holding on to the pawn with bishop g5. Now e5, you can't take, you can push. And on this or this, g6 is fine. Queen b6. Now e5 giving a checkmate threat, okay. Now Hans has a very strong pawn. Passed pawn. This is middle game of opposite colored bishops. The attacker will have the advantage. And I actually like black's chances here because of bishop h4 putting pressure on f2. The pawn looks really strong, but I don't know how to make use of it now. The bishop and the queen are looking at a wall, and you can't reroute your bishop to a different diagonal easily. But at the same time, any moment you attack, we can just go for an ending with queen d4 and exchanging everything. Now, if you take the pawn, we get rook b1, get the pawn, support our passer. So it's a good idea from Hans. Now look at this f5, how aggressive. He's pushing the guy to take the pawn. Please take my pawn. But he said no. Now we have rook f7 and we can put pressure. I think bishop b3 back is very good. Will bishop b3 come? Yes, okay. And now maybe rook c1, but no, rook c1, f3. Here we go. He's trying to make a clamp on the squares, on the dark squares. Dark squares. Creating a weakness. You can't go queen c4 because the pawn will drop. But you can go definitely bishop a4. Oh, he's going for an ending. Nice. The decision to go for an ending or not to go for an ending is really crucial in these positions. I think the ending with two pawns after this one drops are very good for white. Anish has a minute and he's thinking. Should I go for an ending? The ending is almost lost, I think. This ending is almost lost for black. Now, the major idea is not to exchange the major pieces, namely the rooks in this position. You need to keep at least one rook. Okay, he's hitting the extra pawn. One of them will drop. He needs to keep at least one of them. So which one will he keep? Okay, he kept this one, which is the more dangerous one. Oh, wow. Okay. No, please. What is the trick? Oh, the trick is here. Okay, check. Rook takes g6. Okay, is g6... Oh my god. Pawn takes, and then bishop f5 mate, right? Yes. Pawn takes, king h3, and bishop f5 is mate. 2-0 for Hans. Okay, very good start. Again, we flip the board. We have the Slav defense. Hans is choosing the Chebenenko Slav or A6 Slav. c5 is the most challenging, according to my knowledge. Will Anish go for c5? No, he went for the Catalan setup with g3, bishop g2. Okay. Maybe not the most common. Now, Hans is taking the pawn. White stops him. Anish stops him from defending with b5 because pawn takes, knight takes. You can't take back because the rook hangs. But Hans immediately hits the center with c5. Normal. This is all normal stuff. This is a theory battle in a Blitz game. Okay. e6. Now Hans will always have a problem of developing the bishop. Maybe he will go this, which is a common problem in all Catalan systems. The light squared bishop problem and the pressure on b7. Okay. Niemann's time is not... Okay. What about now? Is everything alright now? Okay, I think now everything is fine. Time is shown for every player. And we have the score of 2-0 for Hans Niemann. Whoever reaches 9.5 points will be called the winner. Okay. So e6, knight e5, preparing bishop b g2. Hans took the pawn. The bishop is hindering the development of the queenside pieces. Very normal positional battle in a Catalan position. Now the check. He's trying to fight for the light squares in the center, so he might take, followed by knight d5, shutting the door for this bishop, and then trying to develop. But he didn't do it immediately, he didn't take immediately, and instead he did this. And now Hans will move. Okay, he refused to take and give up the two bishops, and instead he played knight b6. I don't know if knight b6 is good or bad. Oh, wow. What a very sneaky way of developing your pieces. What is this? The knight hangs, but this one hangs as well. So knight takes, knight takes. Wow. Knight g4. It's like, I don't care about this. You solve your own problems. Very smart decision by Anish, because you don't want to relieve the tension here. You want just to keep the tension. Every piece looks really unusual. And solve your problems. Okay, knight d5 now, which at least loses a pawn in this position after knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes. I guess. Is it right? Knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes. Now what? Will Hans have any discovery, like knight somewhere and then the knight on g4 is hit? Probably, yeah. Oh, wow. What? That's very strong by Hans. Knight takes, pawn takes. Or maybe, yeah, bishop takes first. It has to be played first, yes. And then if you take immediately, we would have got knight c5 hitting the knight and threatening a fork. That was too deep. Wow. Amazing tactical shot. Now this is threatened. And he's given up the exchange because he would have get knight c7 in return. But now Hans castled. And now Anish played king c3, stopping knight b3. And the material is even. But we are in an ending where white has more active king. And now he couldn't take with the knight because the pawn on b7. I think this is the first game where Anish where Hans is under pressure. Time pressure and position pressure. 6 seconds. The bishop is a monster. This is the ideal Catalan bishop. If take en passant, maybe knight here and taking the pawn. He needs to play this at some point. Boom. Okay. They're going for a minor piece ending with a pawn up for white. Time scramble as always. 10 seconds versus 8 seconds. Okay, this should be a winning ending for Anish because this extra pawn. Yes, yes. Now the score is 2-1. Now, not only the score is 2-1, but the battle will fire up, I guess. I guess the battle will be very intense from now on. 2-1. Anish scores the first win in the battle. The score is 2-1 now. I have to mention that every player has a chance to ask for a 2-minute break 4 times during this battle. So he has a button, he can click on it and get a 2-minute break. Again, the same line with knight c3 Italian. And instead of the normal c3 d4 ideas, knight c3, knight d5. I think this is exactly the same opening played in game. Is not committed on e3, so c3 is okay. Now if bishop takes, queen takes, you can't take the pawn because the queen cares about the d3 pawn. Okay, I think white has a better version now. Very strong center for Hans Niemann. The center is already hit with d5. You can't go e5 because the bishop will be bad and you can't reroute it to a better square. So he decided to take. Oh, but taking again. Now he takes with the queen, right? Oh, he took with the pawn. Okay, he can't take with the queen because the bishop is hanging. Okay, very good decision by Hans. Now we have isolated pawn versus an isolated pawn. I think equal position, but the pin is really annoying. But he can just break it with queen d3, just queen d3. And then he plays knight e5, for example. Or queen b3, as in the game. So, Anish now has a decision to keep the 2 bishops or to take now. He took now. Okay. Now we're playing same colored bishops middle game, where the ending should favor black a bit because this pawn is on a dark square. I remember Fischer games, he won a lot of games just because the pawn is on a dark square and can be attacked by the bishop and the king in the ending. Okay, rook a6, good move. Putting pressure here maybe, or here maybe. A lot of ideas from rook a6. Actually supporting also the f6 square. And now Anish will do his next move. He's thinking. What should Anish do with the black pieces? Should he go rook b6, which is not available now because of bishop c7? Or rook e6? He is challenging another file now, which is the e file. Hans on the other side is putting pressure on the weaknesses. This is very strong. Rook c5, very strong. Putting pressure on the d5 and a5 pawn. And Anish decided to exchange the bishops. Now, at least he can push d5 after pawn takes, right? He has to push it. But after pushing rook d5 and the pawn drops, Will Hans win this game? Oh, wow. So he took the pawn? He doesn't care about d3 because rook d5? And this pawn is also weak. This ending should be winning for Hans. Anish is in time trouble. Rook d3 now. Perfect. Will he push anyways? Can he push anyways? Oh my god! But now, queen d7. Okay. Oh, queen d7. At the right moment. Now the pawn should be taken, but this will be taken. Now, the next stage will be putting pressure on the a5 pawn. But you can't do it like this, followed by this, because we have a check and we're winning the rook. Okay. g6. Escape square for every king. That's not an easy ending. That's definitely not an easy ending. Major piece endings. The moment you move, I will probably checkmate you. On the dark square. A dark square complex weakness. Hands. Anish is asking for a rook ending in which a high probability of drawing chances will occur. But Hans says no. 6 seconds versus 1 minute and 40 seconds. Anish is insisting on a rook ending. But Hans refuses. Now this is the threat. Can he stops him? Can he do rook e7, queen f8? Or what? Oh wow. He went for an ending now. Okay. Now can you do this? Dropping this, winning this, and try to win with this? It's very hard to convert. But he went for it anyways. It's his only chance to win. Okay, can you do this at least? And then push the pawn? Okay, very good, very good. Now you bring your own king. Yes. Keep going, don't worry. I think this is the way. It has to be this move. But he waited with the rook, okay. He played it, okay. Now... I really wanted the rook to be here because we could have given a check and pushed. But now if you give a check, he comes with a tempo on the rook. Okay, now the move has come. It's not easy to convert. He's got to play this, for example. But this allows rook here. Oh my god. Very hard to... He decided to give up the pawn. And stop the rook from he will kick the rook away from the back of the pawn. Yeah, that's a very common idea. Oh my god. Keep going. Yes. This should be winning now. Keep going. Okay, or he puts pressure on the pawn. Keep going. Now he pushed the pawn supported by the rook. Check, okay. Here. Okay. Takes. Now, if we push the pawn, we win the game because we have the bridge idea. Push. No, this is winning. This is very much winning. But he said no. Okay, now a check. Yeah, he can now defend. Very nice. And the bridge will come from here. Wow. Wow, I love how this game ended. Now, in this position, I guess... in the analysis section, you can see the idea of just pushing the pawn, and the moment you give a check, I just cover. Or you could also go, but I think you don't have to go for the bridge now. You need to go for the bridge after pushing the pawn. So maybe here now. And after takes, you queen first. So push, we queen first, and we win. Okay, we are going for a 2-minute break. I don't know who chose to get a 2-minute break first. Who asked for a 2-minute break? I think after the third loss, Mr. Anish Giri asked for a 2-minute break. This is my expectation, I don't know. So we're back in less than a minute. The score is 3 versus 1 for Hans Niemann. Okay, we have the 5th game today. I think it's called the hydration break, not dehydration break. Hydrate yourself. Wait a moment. We've got the Ragozin from Hans, so we will just... and we're having a Ragozin. Okay. We've just given up the 2 bishops. This pawn, I don't know if it could be taken or not. This is probably a theory. And because I don't play usually the Ragozin, I have no enough theory in my brain about this line. Okay, rook e8, knight e4 is an idea. Black, of course, had to play h6 and g5 to break the pin because he doesn't have a dark square bishop on e7. And this is the cost of giving up the 2 bishops. On the other hand, we have some weaknesses on the queen side. Can we go? Yes, knight e4, hoping for getting one of the bishops again, and also putting pressure on the c3 pawn. Now c4 played, just getting rid of the weakness, and a5 hitting the queen has come. Now queen b5 loses to knight c3. Queen b3 doesn't lose, but now knight c5 could be an for the queen. Queen b2, maybe? Putting pressure on the diagonal? No, he chooses queen a3. Okay. Now queen e7, breaking the pin with a tempo to exchange pieces. The rook and the bishop and the pawn. So queen e7 is really good choice. I don't know what happened. Okay, the board has switched. Okay. Wow. Trap the queen or something. Okay. He's kicking the queen away from the defense of the c3 square. Knight d5 hitting the queen. Now the queen is almost out of squares on the knight, but now the knight joins in. No, queen a5 may be good, but rook a8. Now the knight hangs. No, we have to solve the knight problem. So queen a5. Now, what should black do here? To support, and then to kick, and then to go here? I don't know. So he supports and kicks at the same time. Okay. Rook c5. Now we have... It's not actually a pin. Knight b3, putting pressure on the knight. Probably forcing a trade now. But you can go rook c7 anyways, because the bishop can't take, the queen hangs. But the problem of rook c7 is that after takes, you have to take with the rook, and the knight would be hanging. Ooh. Hans doesn't care about anything. He just sacks on the queen, on the king side, with knight takes e3. Wow. Incredible calculation. Now you have to take with the bishop, which is terrible because of the check. No, but you can take like this, and now I take, putting pressure on the pawn, and I have a very strong c-pawn. What is Hans doing? He's showing an incredible form. The check doesn't count because we don't have good discoveries. Bishop d3 is very good fighting move from Anish. You know what? I like the check followed by the pawn push, but the problem is bishop takes. So he took immediately, and he's hitting the knight. You don't have enough time to take. I do have enough time to take because I will take and defend. Right? Yes. Now, now, Hans Niemann is playing the same ending, but it is Anish who has the passed pawn. It's almost the same ending, the last ending, but here Anish has the passed pawn. But this is a drawish ending. You know why? Because if you support your pawn, I will just take the pawn. You push the pawn, I will go again. And you can't convert in this position the pawn easily because the rook on a4 is very active. a4 is very active. This is completely drawish, and I think we're expecting the first draw in our battle. I think this is a draw. It has to be a draw. But Hans is trying. Yes, that's the first draw, as I told you. Okay. One more game. Someone asked for the bar, but actually the bar for some reason we don't have the eval bar. Simply because I don't know the exact reason. I don't want to say anything, but it's I think we don't want to show it because of the fair play rules. We should not show the eval bar. I don't have it. By the way, I do the commentary, all the commentary without a database or an engine. I just wanted you to know. So we don't have the eval bar. But if you want me to do a recap of the games in a separate video after the live, we can do it. With an eval bar and database and everything. Yes. Okay. Now we have some sort of Nimso, which went into Aragozin after d5, and then it looks like this is Nimzo. This has to be Nimzo with a d5 Nimzo, sometimes they call it. Where black lost his dark squared bishop for the knight on c3. But he's got a very strong bishop, and our bishop is hemmed in up till now. This is the problem of the bishop. We don't know how to reactivate the bishop. Taking with the knight is logical, but he took with the pawn to stop knight c5. Now the bishop is alive again. This is one of the merits of taking with the pawn. Bishop a6, just to neutralize the bishop on the long diagonal, is an idea. But it's not the most active and not the most ambitious. The most ambitious is probably bishop d2, rook c1, and then try to play bishop b1, queen d3. I think this is fine. Knight e5 is also typical in the IQB positions. Once he takes with the pawn. Now he's got a pawn which stops the knight from coming back to f6. So the idea of the battery would work much better because we don't have knight f6. So taking here is definitely a mistake. You can't take here. Knight takes e5, pawn takes e5 is a positional mistake. No one can do that. Yes, okay. You just played a rook on an open file, or a semi-open file, putting pressure on the pawn. And Hans is playing bishop d2, probably rook c1. But after rook c1, queen b8, and you exchange some pieces, this is not favoring the player playing with the IQP. I'd love to play h3, okay. Escape square for the king. Always useful. And now what? Bishop b1. Okay. Lining himself against the bishop. That's risky. Queen e7 probably. Defending the f7, defending here. He played rook c7, which defends and defends. Normal. Now we have this. This is the real threat. So the queen has to move. The queen really moved. Now bishop takes is a threat. But knight h5 immediately stopped it. Knight can come back with a tempo. Would Hans go for... Okay, for a draw by repetition, but no, he wants more. Now queen h4 and the sacrifices on h6 are looming. They are looming. So bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes. I would love to play this if rook d3 was available, but rook d3 is not available. So he's trying to bring the rook from the other file. So probably now pawn takes. All right. What is this? Is he trying to defend like that? I don't know. So still bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes. The rook doesn't have an entry. That's why they're thinking it's not an easy position. Queen to g3, renewing the threat if bishop takes h6. Will he go knight h5 again? He went knight h5 again. Now queen f3, knight back. And now h4. So every time Hans is trying to get a new idea, a new attacking idea. Now bishop, this amazing idea by Anish. Boom, 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 boom. Trying to exchange the light squared bishop. What a beautiful idea. On the other hand, Hans wants to go g4, g5. I tried to put pressure on the f7, but Hans is really aware of that. He played b3, defended by the... And then, okay, he kicked the bishop all the way back. And then he's thinking of g4, which is really risky because the bishop will come back on the long diagonal. So g4... Oh my god, he played g4 anyways. Oh, wow. Because once the knight moves, queen e4 would be in the air and queen h7 will join the party. Oh my god. What is this? What is the... Okay. Okay, everything is defended. Good move by Anish, of course. He doesn't care. He just pushes. He's just going for it. Okay, can he take here? Will you take here? But take care of that. You need to take care of that. Maybe he can just take and wait. And still ask the same question. Yes. But now, Anish is claiming the long diagonal. This is the weakness of g4, g5. The diagonal is open. This is very risky. Now rook c7 probably. But take care of g6. Excuse me, my friends. Bishop e3. There's no entry point on c1. Otherwise, it would have been a disaster. Can we do this anyways? He said no. Rook e1. The times scramble as well. 7 seconds versus 14 seconds. Hitting the knight. He's going back. He's trying to win some time. Will he go back again? Okay. Now bishop d5, putting pressure on b3. The b3 pawn is pushed. Now queen here, putting pressure on the other pawn. Now the rook joins. Okay. Oh! Give me the queen. The queen moves. Take care of the... Oof. Another draw. Another draw. In this variation, it was slightly better for black, but another draw in the house. Now Hans is playing with the black pieces. Again, he's trying to play the semi-Slav, the Budvinnik system from Anish Giri with bishop g5, knight bd7. Knight bd7 is starting the Cambridge Spring with queen a5, but no. We have now a regular exchange variation of the queen's gambit declined. With rook e8 is a typical move. Knight e4 is the move. Now bishop takes here is the only good move. I played this position against the Egyptian international master Ibrahim Labib, and I actually lost because I took here and he took with the queen like nothing happened. But the best move is to play bishop takes on h4, allowing the check and then to move, and then the bishop comes back. Now black has a typical Carlsbad structure, while Anish Giri has the typical minority attack. Bishop d7 from Hans. Is bishop d7 stopping the minority attack? No. So what is the big deal now? Oh, he wants c5. So if you're going to... I think you have to take now. But if taking now, you might take with the rook and undouble the rooks. You need to break the pin almost immediately. Queen e2 is bad. Queen d2. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now we have some coffee. I think we're going to enjoy the stream more after this coffee. On the other hand, I think you can just win this tempo followed by knight here and the rook swings, but not the g6 because of the bishop. Maybe to f6. The tempo looks fine. How many total matches? It's not about... Oh my god. Relax, Mr. Hans. Relax, buddy. What? It's either a blunder or a brilliant move. If you take, I take, and now knight here comes, but you can stop it. But when you stop knight with bishop e2, you bring the rook with a tempo. If you ignore him, he would have given you a checkmate, so you couldn't ignore the guy. But now, f3, stopping knight g4, but allowed rook e3. Now Hans is a piece down, but has a very strong attack. He knows the nature of the position, because if you don't get a very strong attack on the king side, the minority attack will prevail. And you would go to an ending with a weakness on c6 or b7. Thank you. Now knight h5 to f4 is a very strong threat. Now, is there a yeah, the queen is tied down to defend the knight on c3. You can't defend with the queen. Wow, what a move by Hans. Bishop on h3, amazing idea. Yes. Okay. Nice. Nice coffee break. The knight moved back, going for the defense, stopping knight f4, but cutting the queen from joining the defense. Oh, wow. Hans sacked an exchange to fight for the g6 square. And then he... What? What a tactical wizard. Because once you take check and I win your queen, what is going on? Wow. Well, this is very strong. Amazing, amazing tactical shots by Hans Niemann. Wow. Two rooks versus a queen, but black has a lot of pawns. Just grab a pawn. What can you do otherwise? Oh, you can run with queen g2, okay. And then to play b6. So he doesn't want to exchange pawns, because the more you exchange, the more winning chances you're losing. The more pawns you are exchanging, the more winning chances you're wasting. b6 now. h4. h5 probably. Or queen f6. I like queen f6 as well. But queen f6, rook e5. Okay, what about queen f4? Queen f4 maybe. Okay, queen a5. And time has gone. Oh wow, Anish forfeits on time. Okay. Now the score is 2-5. Favoring Hans Niemann. Okay, we have the English opening, which could transpose to anything. Maybe d4, maybe Catalan, we don't know. Regular d4. Hans is taking his time, and he went for g3, bishop g2. Now, if he plays d3, this is typical, but he went for d4. And now we have the Catalan versus the King is Indian. This is main line. Rook e8, threatening pawn takes pawn, putting pressure on the e4 pawn. And this happened. h3 typical, stopping knight g4, bishop g4. I'm probably preparing bishop e3 at some point. a6. Does he want to play b5? Like rook b8, b5? Or c6, b5? Probably a6 wants c6 and b5, so Hans played bishop f4, immediately putting pressure on the d6 square, which is an upcoming weakness. Rook c1. Knight e3, typical maneuver to exchange some pieces because you lack space. Now the pawn on c4 is under attack. So b3 or knight d5. Knight d5 would allow some more exchanges. But he went e5. Oh my god. Very unexpected. But he's unleashing this bishop and also unleashing the other bishop on this diagonal. Give me this bishop. No. Now give me this pawn. Oh. What is going on? Did Hans Niemann just lose a pawn for free? Maybe e5 wasn't the best move and knight h5 is an exclam. Now, is knight d5 a move? Well, this is interesting. It just hitting the rook now. Bishop takes b7 is a threat. So Anish shuts the door. Now the bishop does another rule by just removing the rook from the open file. But there is rook d2, right? There's rook d2. Oh, wow. No. What? Rook d2, knight e4 takes a knight here. He takes the bishop. I don't follow that. Yeah, rook d2. Knight a4 immediately. Defending the pawn. And going for this idea, which puts pressure here and there. So he just did the same idea, but while defending the b pawn. And also defending the c4 pawn, because it was attacked. Okay, maybe rook a6. Knight c4 still doesn't work because rook takes. Knight c5 doesn't work because rook takes here. So he went back first, kicking the invader, and then he's gonna go knight c4. Or will he just try to repeat because he's a pawn down? Now he's given up on the file. Will knight c4 happen? Knight c5, not c4, I'm sorry. No, he wants to regain his pawn, and he's putting very strong pressure on the dark squares. Also, he's vacating the square for the knight. Strong positional play by Hans. f6. No, knight c5 at last. Bishop back. Okay. Now we've got the file very well. Kick the invader. The invader has gone. Knight to e4. But rerouting himself to d6 now. The knight is really annoying. Oh my god. Okay. I thought this is a threat, but he's now moving with a tempo. If you move here, one more tempo. If you move here, we can now move somewhere else. And the time scramble started. 18 seconds versus 30 seconds. Bishop e6. Avoiding the threat of g4. Hans is playing with a pawn down, but he's got the upper hand of the game. He's avoiding the exchanges. He wants to complicate the game. But Anish is doing really well. Okay, don't worry. Just give me the two bishops. And now you don't have the file. Your pieces are tied to the first rank or the 8th rank. The knight has nowhere to go. He's got to go back. Wow. Now the rook infiltrates. And the pawn will be taken. It is taken. Now that's a pawn. That's a very strong pawn. Oh my god. Wow. I am impressed. But Anish is putting very strong defense. He's got the blockader of the passer. And he would love to exchange the rooks and playing an ending of exchange of opposite colored bishops. But Hans will keep the tension. On the other hand, this pawn is running. You need to take care of it. You can push it anyways, and I take and you take. I don't know. This is exactly what happened. This is exactly what happened. Now Hans is a pawn up, but only 4 seconds for both players. Please exchange and let's go for okay. Oh my god. Oh my god. The king is so far away. This is lost. Oh my god. Isn't this lost? What? No, it's not. I'm sorry. Because this pawn promotes here, and this is a draw. Okay. When I analyzed the position, I don't know what happened to my brain. I thought that the pawn will promote here. This is a white pawn. It should promote the other way around. Okay. So this is actually A draw. Very well-known theoretical draw. Okay. The score is 5.5 versus 2.5. Whoever reaches 9.5 wins the battle. Let's flip the boards. We've got the Queen's Gambit accepted, which gives typical IQB positions for white. After pawn takes, pawn takes. You can play knight c6 now. But the approach of b3, yes, he doesn't want to play the IQB. Because the idea of b3 is to play bishop b2, and once you take, he takes, and once you take with the queen or with the bishop, and you don't take with the pawn. So probably he doesn't want to play with an IQB, and this is exactly what happened. He took on c5, allowing or permitting such position, which should be equal, because we don't have any majorities or minorities of pawns. But it's not an easy game. A lot of tension, a lot of quiet moves, a lot of maneuvering. I hate playing these positions, but they are masters. They know how to handle it. Is it gonna be bishop e7, just bishop back to e7? Or bishop d7 and castling long? You need to take care of knight g5, putting pressure on the f7 square. Oh, they already played, I'm sorry. Oh, wow. Wow, they played a lot of moves. All Anish Giri's pieces are controlling the e5 square, as you can tell. He wants to sit on the e5 square with a piece. But on the other hand, Hans sacked the g7 pawn, trying to trap the bishop, and also he opened the g file to attack. This is extremely complicated position. b5. The knight is short of squares. He has only d2, b2, a3. All the squares are retreating squares. They're not very active. Knight e5. So he went to d2, which is the best of the three options. Now Anish has a very good square on c5. And he's putting... Oh, this is an annoying move. I really like Anish's position in this game. He's got a pawn. Yes, the bishop looks really awkward. But it can come back to the game like this. And a pawn is a pawn at the end. And this is really stressful. The bishop can go back, but the pawn will drop. But Anish, to get this position, he spent almost all of his time. He's got only 20 seconds. While Hans has a minute and a half. But he's thinking. Now it's his turn to think. They already played. They already played, okay. So what happened really? He took the bishop and he went back. Oh my god, okay. Can we go 2 moves here in order to see what is going on? Okay. Now e4, very good moment because he wants to run with the pawn up. Anish also has the option of taking one more pawn at some point of the game. But now the pawn is pushed. 8 seconds. The rook hangs. Rook takes will probably happen. Because what else? Yes. Nice move by Hans f5. He wants to break open the diagonal, but the bishop runs with a tempo on the knight. Questions needs to be answered. Okay. Now, Hans is thinking of taking the pawn, and he did. But we ran with our piece. If you go here to defend the pawn, okay, but he can take. Now Hans is a piece down. But he's got some pawns. 2 pawns. Anish would love to get more pawns to win the game, actually. But Hans keeps fighting. 2 seconds versus 20 seconds. Time is a major factor. Annoying moves in time scramble. Will Anish get this game? I think he can get this game. As you can tell, Black is going for pawns. He's trying to take the pawns. Yes, as you can see. Now he created a passer. Wow, wow, wow. Hans is doing great in this battle. He created a passer which will always win against 2 pieces versus rook. A rook with a passer is very strong. Stronger than the 2 pieces. For your information, if you have like 3 pawns over 3 pawns on the king's side and the rook versus 2 minor pieces, the 2 minor pieces will always win. But once you can create a passed pawn to help the rook, the two minor pieces will be really helpless. Okay, I think we're getting 5-minute break, and I see you after 5 minutes. Thank you for watching, and I see you in 5 minutes. Hello and welcome back to the battle between Hans Moak, Niemann, and Anish Giri. The score now is 6.5, 2.5 in the favor of Hans Niemann. Whoever reaches 9.5 first will be the winner of this challenge. we have an asymmetrical English with e5. Anish immediately does the exchange on c3, giving up the two bishops for ruining the structure. And then he played a5, a4, try to clamp down on the queen side. Securing a beautiful square on the knight. For the knight on c5 after a5, a4. Typical pressure in these lines. They call it dark square strategy. You can tell that that white has the two bishops, but you can't feel the two bishops because the position is closed up till now. Rook a5 is very good because I think once he takes with the rook. Also, the idea of knight e3, knight d5 at some point. Rook ad1, logical. If b6 is, if the idea of b6 to take with the pawn, then what is the idea of taking with of playing rook a5? I don't follow. Maybe he wants to achieve b5. But is b5 a good idea? To undouble the pawns that you already doubled? I don't know. There is something I am missing. Okay. Queen c2. He wants to exchange the bishop, but Hans refuses. No, the queen is improving itself. Here we go with b4. Oh my god, okay, he runs with a tempo. Now the knight hangs. Knight is pushed away. Hans is fighting for the open file. Will he do this? He did, okay. Knight d5 looks really promising. But he's fighting for the file. He wants rook a3, queen a2. He wants to infiltrate the file via the file to put pressure on a7. On the other hand, knight e6 is played. Now he did infiltrate, putting pressure on the c7 square, tying down the knight movement. Is knight d5 an idea? Is he trying... Will he try to exchange the bishops and then get this move? He went knight d5 immediately now. If you take, I will fix my structure. Very good. That's an annoying move. Bishop e3, try to get rid of the knight. I don't know. Maybe. Bishop e3. this knight is really intolerable. Well, this is called a restricted piece, but not anymore. h5. Now he's got bishop e3 hitting the knight. The knight is not supported. The knight has only this or f6. Or maybe this, but this allows bishop takes, queen takes, and queen takes. Check, you move. Or pawn takes. Okay, so he's telling the guy, take, 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 and your king might be. Or this check, oh my god, this check is really strong. On e3, you can't do this idea of bishop takes, queen takes, because queen e3, king has to move, and then queen here, or even queen takes. You can't do it. Queen d8 is an exclamation mark. Hans took the pawn. f5. He took again. Hans activated the pawn grabbing moves. Or the mode of pawn grabbing. He grabs every pawn that he sees. And he's running for his life. The king needs a safer spot. The queen wants to join. But he's running. Hitting one of the bishops. Will you remove it? Now the Grandmaster will try to evaluate the ending after the exchange and then to take a decision. Will he go for it or not go for it? He decided to go for it. Now what? Yes, away from these ideas. Take care of the invasion. Queen a6, good move. Is queen e3 happening anyways? It's an annoying move. It has to be played. Queen e3. Yes, yes, good. Good move by Anish Giri. Check. Another check. Check. Oh, he's going for a draw. He's going for a draw. Because he was really short on time and the position doesn't look promising for each side. I think it's very unclear. 7 versus 3. We've got Aragozan again with the exchange variation. I think Hans will go back with the bishop at some point. Okay, c3. We're going for the same structure of Carlsbad. Queen b3, putting pressure on the bishop and on the b7 square. Will he take? Will he insert a5 first and after a3 he will take? We don't know. The approach is up to the Grandmaster. They sometimes play a5, a3, and a4, but this is the approach Niemann is taking in this position. He's decided to play bishop takes c3, giving up the two bishops, and later on dealing with this annoying pin. He's dropping the pawn the same as the last variation, because once you take, I think rook b2 will hinder white's castling rights. You can't challenge on the file because of this bishop. This idea of just sacking the pawn is good. But Anish is thinking, should I take the pawn? Right. Should I go for the pawn grabbing mode and keep taking pawns? I don't think so. I don't think it's a good idea. He went for it. Okay. Now we have queen b3. Queen b6, sorry. Okay, now this is weak. This is weak. 2, 6. Hans is a pawn down. But Anish has some weaknesses. So he's getting rid of one of his weaknesses. Very logical. And he's got the 2 bishops. I like to play white in this game. Now, Hans is doubling on the A file, trying to regain his pawn. Very logical move. If pawn takes, Hans will activating the knight, keeping his pawns together. Because after taking with the pawn, okay, now Anish this pawn with knight e5. Now, is c5 a move? Yes, okay. c5 anyways. Because once pawn takes, knight takes, most probably Hans will regain his pawn. Okay? And he will have the passed pawn on c5, while Anish will have to waste a lot of time trying to bring a passage from this majority, 4/3. So, in a moment, the position has changed, and I like black now. Once the rook is doubled, we have bishop c4, which puts pressure on the knight and defends the pawn. So I think f6 is an idea. But this happens anyways. Okay, so he jumped in and he's putting pressure on this. He wants to exchange the bishops, even for the cost of a weak pawn on e6, but he wants to exchange the bishop because he wants to regain his pawn on a2. And now the c5 pawn will decide who has the advantage. Now, it could be a weakness, it could be an advantage. It depends on the way you use the pawn. It doesn't matter if you push... Okay, rook c1 now. Rook c8, sorry. No, because knight b6. A good move by Anish Giri. Knight d7. He defended from here. Okay. Can we do this now? Maybe this will happen and the pawn will drop. Beautiful maneuvers by both players. But you can't do this now because of the check. Okay. He's limiting the movement of this rook, and I think g4 will be a threat. So he sidestepped g4 anyways by rook d5. Now I like knight here, stopping rook f2 and then invading. No, you can't. So you have to move the king first, okay? Now what? Now you move. And you open the way for the knight to move. For the pawn to move. Wow, amazing. Amazing. Now this idea is very strong. Just install a knight and deliver a mate. But this is not what happened. Why? Is this hard? Is this bad, I mean? Is this a bad idea? I don't know. Maybe the pawn was faster than the mating idea. Wow. Takes? Oh, he blocked the pawn. Now he wants to take. But Anish wants this pawn as well. Now this pawn cannot be defended, but we can... Beautiful. The game will end in a draw, but a beautiful draw. They really played well in this game. Time. Oh my god. 2 seconds versus 6 seconds. They don't just agree to draw, they want to keep going. Which is really annoying. Oh my god, okay. Go back, just go back, defend the pawn. He doesn't want to go back. Okay. It's a draw, people. Okay. No, that's a draw no matter what, okay. Very good fight by both players. The score is 7.5, 3.5, favoring Hans Niemann. One more game in the battle. Hans playing with the white pieces, the Italian game with the knight c3. He just prepared the line and he doesn't change it, which is a very good strategy. But you see, he changed some details in the line. So sometimes he plays c3, sometimes he plays a5. Like minor adjustment to the line every time. Which is something I really like. Taking here is, oh my god. Oh wow. I thought this would be bad. Because, oh wow. But he took. This is a very brave decision by Hans. To take the knight. And then to break the pin with g4. A very brave approach. This knight probably belongs to c4. And after this pawn push maybe to a5 to put pressure on c6. We don't know what is gonna happen. We're just anticipating. Or maybe here, but it will just be taken because of this pressure. Or will it be taken? Oh, wow. Wow. I think now... Oh, wow. What an aggressive approach by Anish Giri. He wants to open the position because he's got the two bishops. So he's got d5 to make this bishop better piece. Very good. Now he has doubled pawn, but he doesn't care. He wants to put pressure on this pawn. Maybe queen b7 or queen c6. But not without losing this pawn. First, he fights for a different file. Maybe he could have taken and played rook b8. But he wants to keep more pieces. Hand said no entry. At least exchange one of the rooks. But after rook takes and rook a8, Hand can play rook b2. Now, the pawn is defended on a5, so the queen can move to b7 or to c6, putting pressure on this. Once Hand felt the pressure, he started to kick the bishop with h4, h5. Now he's defending, okay. But the pin will happen. But it doesn't matter now. Is this a move? Is h5 a move in this position to stop h5? Just h6 and bishop h7, right? I actually liked h5 more. Where will Anish put his bishop? He doesn't like the fact that the bishop will be hemmed in on h7, so he changed his mind. He played the bishop to e8. A beautiful maneuvering by Anish. The bishop will sit on c6, having a better view from the other diagonal. This diagonal. Very good understanding. g5 followed by queen d2. Or maybe queen d2 immediately, putting pressure on this. Now queen d3 with the same idea. He defended like this, okay. On the other hand, Hand is putting a strong pressure on the e5 square. Very complicated position. Anish wants to open the position because he's got the two bishops. At least he's got this unopposed bishop on e8, which, if activated very well, it could be the man of the match. Immediately putting pressure on the pawn. So he shuts the door and the bishop kept closed. No target on h5. I don't know why did he didn't like king h7. Maybe he saw some g5 stuff Or takes, and then g5, I don't know. Ooh! Oh my god! Any chance to just go for an attack or sacrifice? Hans does it. He doesn't hesitate. He doesn't hesitate to sacrifice and create an imbalance. Is it good? Is it bad? We don't know. Is this check available? Looks very scary. But this one as well, oh my god, okay. Check. Yes. And then what? He just defended because you can't take the check will win the queen. Rook g3 would win the queen. The time pressure again, 4 seconds. What? What was that? Maybe he's got no other options. Wow. Wow. I am actually very much entertained in this battle. Hans is 1 point away from ending the battle, and he's trying the same line in which Anish played queen takes c3 instead of b takes c3. Stopping knight e4, which is an idea. Can he play knight e4 anyways? I think knight e4 is fine. Knight e4? He played it, okay. c5, bishop e6 looks normal. You don't want to abandon the pawn. But if you do this, you give up the diagonal and allow rook b1. Good move by Anish. g4. So Hans decided not to give up the diagonal, not to allow rook b1. Now Anish will keep playing on the idea of g4, using the f5 square. The king defends, stopping any invasion by the rook to c2 square. But now, okay, takes. He took with the other pawn because rook c2 can be achieved anyways. The bishop is defending. Oh, wow. Now I like Hans' position because this weakness. Wow. Rook c7 and double. Knight g3. The bishop is amazing. Knight e3 with the same idea, maybe, at some point. Now, this idea of knight g5, knight e4 is stopped with h4. Sorry. Yeah, okay. This is a real threat, because after knight takes, king takes, rook takes c3. So he sidestepped the threat. Bishop e4 wouldn't be that good, because after bishop takes, pawn takes, the pawns will try to march, defended by the knight. A5. G5 by Hans. Okay. Rook a3. So maybe now rook b3, and instead of rook b1 that you can't achieve, he played rook a3 for rook b3. Okay. He's getting rid of the weakness. Just b5. You take en passant. I take with the rook, maybe. Yes, dropping this, but activating the rook on b2. That would be fun. A lot of fun here. Yeah, knight d3 is amazing. Like, rook takes, rook b2, king c1, knight d3, king here, and then knight takes with a check. This is a devastating attack. It reminds me of the coordination between rook, knight, and bishop that Fischer did while he was 13 years old against Donald Byrne in the game of the century. Can we play bishop d3 now? Just to cut the king's running way, but we deprive ourselves from knight d3. So two pieces are fighting for the same square. They call it... It has a name. Superfluous pieces. I'm not sure if I pronounce this right, but it has something like this. Superfluous pieces. It's very common to say superfluous knights, because two knights are fighting for the same square. The problem of bishop d3 is this rook move, which will infiltrate. Knight takes could happen using the pin. Which I think is very good. Why not? Bishop b3 is not available. If Niemann wins this, the battle ends. This would win a rook as well. What? This is totally winning now. How can Anish solve his problem? Rook a3, okay. But now the check is very strong. Yeah, oh my god, this is a very strong infiltration. Bishop b3, threatening rook takes. Niemann defends the bishop. Again, the same threat. Rook takes, pawn takes, and then bishop takes. So the bishop sidestep the threat. Bishop e4, and he is moving with the tempo. You can't go here because of knight h3 check. You can't go here because of knight here check. Oh my god! Can you feel the tension? Can you feel... Okay, knight c4, counter-attacking. And he ran with a check. And then he will win the rook. And I think the challenge is already finished. 9.5 versus 3.5. Congratulations to Hans Moke Niemann winning this challenge. Okay, we'll just see if we have more games. I think we don't have more games. It is already a challenge ended in the favor of Grandmaster Hans Moke Niemann from United States of America. Hard luck, Mr. Anish Giri. Great fight, and I see you around. Thank you for watching. Bye.